first I wanted to write an article, and then I thought maybe it would be better to start it off as a presentation. And then I'm kind of thinking of perhaps turning this into a YouTube video. I don't even want to be a YouTuber. I just want this information to exist in the world. The origins of the CCRU, aka the Cybernetic Cultural Research Unit.
Yeah.
The CCRU does not and has not and will never exist. Technically, this is actually true because the CCRU started at Warwick University. It was created for their new research fellow and recruit, Sadie Plant, as sort of boundary to do her work in. But next slide. That's Sadie Plant. She is cool.
She's actually
But she unexpectedly quit, and the paperwork that was supposed to be written, filled out to make the Cybernetic Cultural Research Unit a part of this academic institution was never fully filled out because she had left so early. It was the CCRU was passed down to Nick Land, which unofficially functioned as this sort of club where people would host seminars down the hall in some random office. There's actually not a lot of photos of the actual CCRU interactions during this time, but this is the one thing I found. This is a poster for one of their events. They would always mix not just philosophy talks, but DJs and music and performance art. Also, all of this was centered around Sadie Plant's original interest in cyber theory, so everything was like very technological. Nick Land was hosting this club at Warwick University for about a year, but slowly the CCRU became a bit of an embarrassment to Warwick. They didn't really, the philosophy department did not see what they were doing there as philosophy. They would have these yearly assessments that these are the things that happened during like the school year and in the philosophy department, and they're like, this isn't philosophy, this doesn't go into the assessment. They were kind of growing hostile and passive aggressive. The CCRU gone. It ended up with Nick Land. He was a professor there. He resigned from his position. They moved the operation base into an area called Leamington Spa. This is in England, by the way.
Shout out. The story I remember hearing, because I did some research for the CCRU for a video ages ago. The story I heard was that Nick Land was selling drugs.
I mean, I've heard of a lot of things. He'd walk on tables and he would dry his underwear on the heater.
Yeah, well, just in terms of him losing his job, one of the contributing factors was he was caught selling drugs, or like procuring drugs.
Do you know what kind of drugs?
I think it was just speed.
Yeah, I remember actually because I was reading the editor's note to thing that they were talking about how ideas were just too abstract for the regular academia, and so he had to leave. But I feel as though it's definitely
they definitely prefer the storyline of we were too cool for academia, but also they're also quite known for doing drugs and amphetamines and all sorts of things. And both are probably true. There's also other people. The CCRU had other people in it. No one ever really talks about the other people.
She had a awesome guy.
People talk about Mark Fisher.
Mark Fisher made it out.
Yeah, he made it out. I honestly need to add
He died?
He killed himself, actually.
He made it out.
He made it out. So Orphan Drift, they're a collective that they collaborated with a lot, and they handle a lot of the visual aspects. Like, can you continue to the next slide? This is one. So when the CCRU became independent, moved to Leamington Spa, they communicated with the people more through pamphlets and through music and through raves and events. And this is one of the zines that they made in collaboration with Orphan Drift and the CCRU. And it's just stunning. So, okay, next.
That's really...
That's an OG version of the numogram. Are you kidding me? That's so sick. All of these contain writing, characters, and ideas that ended up continuing on to the CCRU writings. All of these were kind of experiments for what would become the writings. They also did performance art, raves, and events. And the main one was Syzygy Festival.
Syzygy.
Syzygy. Is it Syzygy?
Yes.
Syzygy.
Syzygy.
Held in the year that I was born. This is just one. There's actually a lot of documentation and photos and audio of art created during this festival. Essentially, Orphan Drift took the 5 main lemurs in the lemur universe, and they just were making crazy art. This is supposed to be a lemur. So Nick Land and Sadie Plant, they collaborated on this book with a few other authors and Orphan Drift to create this book, which is essentially the predecessor to the CCRU writings. I just want you to appreciate all of the chapter names. It captures the first chapter is called Autism. So this is sort of their first experiments, and you can already see how they don't really care whether it's readable or not. Now we're moving on to the CCRU writings.
It's right here.
Ta-da! This is my copy.
It's so cute.
You've actually made it a little prince.
It's a personal journal at this point.
Cute, actually.
The Lemurian Time Warp. To explain a bit about the format of the CCRU writings, it's not a fiction book where it's once upon a time there's this. It formats itself in the form of these articles, and all of these articles are presented as historical documents where there are accounts of happenings, there are letters between individuals, there are interviews between people, and everything is sort of told, all this information is told to you with this serious straight face of this is real. These are things that happen.
When I was reading this, I thought that all this was real until about midway through the book, and I was trying to download the books that it mentions in this, and then realizing I was, fantasy.
Well, I'm actually going to talk about this in a second because it merges real. It does have writings in here do exist. Also, writings in here don't exist. People in here, there are people here that do exist,
Yeah,
and there are people here that don't exist.
Yeah.
There will be a chart to explain. Next slide. Okay, we're not. This is a sneak peek.
Whoa.
This is why I was late.
Whoa.
But this is the direction that we will be going. Next slide.
Okay.
So, hyperstition is one of the main concepts that have come out from these group of philosophers, and predominantly Nick Land. Hyperstition is defined as fictions that become reality. It comes from the word hype and superstition, and it describes the success of an idea in the cultural arena. Essentially, when enough people believe in something is real, it becomes real, and it's always been real. Hyperstition holds similar engineering to manifestation or memes, but its motivation is different. These ideas are designed to take over the world, a virus. So imagine these little dots as ideas. They begin as abstract stories, but they grow to influence people and hype them up to take action and change history itself. Hyperstitions are in competition with each other, meaning that the truth of reality is always subject to being attacked, dominated, and destroyed by a new idea. The writings sort of have these 4 tenets of what hyperstition is and what it means. First tenet is element of effective culture that makes itself real, so essentially an idea that is successful enough in the cultural arena that it popularizes certain behavior in all members of civilization. It's a fictional quality that functions as a time travel device. These ideas not only change our belief of the present, but they can also manipulate our understanding of the past and the future. Hyperstition can retroactively rewrite history. Coincidence intensifiers, these are behind-the-scenes manipulators of synchronicity. A strong hyperstition might seem connected to all human experiences. Call to the old ones, which is the most mysterious. The people kind of brush over the most. It kind of ambiguously refers to a monstrous force that is.
That's
Lovecraft.
Lovecraft.
Oh yes, very okay. There are a lot of Lovecraftian references here, but essentially, monstrous force that's pulling the strings. There's a theory. This theory implies that all hyperstitional signals come from a designer of destiny that is leading us towards abomination. While challenging, it's not necessarily impossible to ignore these signals and change the timeline. According to the tenets of hyperstition, there is no difference in principle between a universe, a religion, and a hoax. All involve the engineering of manifestation or practical fiction that is ultimately unworthy of belief. Hyperfiction, which is essentially the genre of this book. This is literature that blurs the line between reality and fiction by essentially presenting itself as reality and unapologetically also being fiction, but implying that that fiction is completely and utterly real as well.
Well, I think it's the fact that the CCRU writings the CCRU writings never question themselves.
Yeah.
Are kind of what lead to this.
The interactable complication between multiple shared universe fictions and lived existence can never be fully grasped or mapped. Next slide. I've mapped it. So we don't need to dig into the details of all this, but I want you to just visually get the picture. So this I call the gradient of hyperfiction, or the gradient of reality and fiction. So the more something is on the line of reality, the more the cultural consensus has agreed that this is something that exists. Whilst this fiction is, I call, unintegrated potential. Everything here is connected to the CCRU universe. So the CCRU, I put smack in the middle of what I call the hyperstitional bridge.
The most real thing on this chart is fucking Microsoft.
Also, why is Carl Jung not on the
Yeah.
end of
He's not on the end of reality because this is sort of in the context of the book.
Okay.
Right.
Carl Jung, in the book, writes a letter to one of the characters. I call them avatars, but one of the fictional characters, they sort of speak for Carl Jung. He essentially is saying to one of the researchers, "Why are you studying Lemurian culture? It's an abomination. You're going to destroy everything." So they're speaking for him and essentially playing him a puppeteer character. So that is why he is actually lower on the reality scale, because they've sort of made him a little more fictional by using him as a puppet. Whilst Bill Gates is over here because this is in an article where it's a huge, absurd accusation, and even in the context of this book, it's kind of played off as a crazy lady who doesn't really know what she's talking about, and it's a random forum post that they found online. But this is the thing. This isn't a random forum post that's found online. They wrote this and invented this, but they say, "We are the CCRU, and we found this random forum post online claiming all these accusations." They not just invent the stories, but they invent the context of how they got to this information. Which is why I had to make a chart, okay?
So Carl Jung didn't actually message anyone. It was completely made up.
Yes.
Okay.
But Carl Jung is
But
real.
yeah, Carl Jung did this. It was a
We think.
We think, consensually, we agree that Carl Jung was probably real. They take all these real people and real institutions and events, their fictional reality, they're using this to validate their fiction and sort of bring them these ideas closer, potentially moving them to cross the hyperstitional barrier, the bridge. Once something crosses the bridge, the group consents to agree this is a real thing. Alright, we're gonna talk about Lemuria now.
Yo!
Oh.
World of Lemuria.
This is the idea of Lemuria, this ancient civilization similar to Atlantis. And
Wow.
Is that a Lemurian?
yes,
They're not lemurs?
Really?
so you'd think that they'd be lemurs, but in this context, there's a difference between Lemurians and lemurs. So
Cool. Look.
Really?
there have been a lot of creative interpretations of lemurs. and they've been described in many different ways. But Lemurians are not the same as our understanding of lemurs. There's an ancient civilization that predate humans. They don't understand time the way we do. They can turn invisible from a few seconds to years at a time. They can travel through time, and then really randomly, they have really long heels, so they can.
That's crazy. I can also do the last one.
They can, but it's really easy for them. They discover sex.
Let's go.
They're first egg-laying creatures, and it's just written as they
Holy
discover
shit,
sex.
you'll never believe what I
You guys
There's
really
another
confused
way.
me.
And then they interbreed with beasts, and that's what creates the missing, aka the human beings. Their way of thinking and feeling is essentially different from that ours. Not oriented towards time and sequence and causality, so they don't see forwards and backwards. They find these concepts repugnant and difficult to understand. They think we're gross in all senses. The Time War.
Dun, dun, dun.
Okay. I think when people mention the Time War, they don't really know exactly what opposing forces are in the Time War. So I'll kind of explain it. First is the Lemurian Time Wars, where they are about immortality, timeless innocence, journey into the unknown. Then there's the Order, which is kind of like destiny, and they see time as linear. It's the human evolution, development of language tools, but it's also the inevitable lead to weapons, war, and slavery. And then there's Axsys, which represents God, like in this unity, singularity, and this is where sort of the beginnings of Accelerationism. And there's the territory of time, the territory that they're fighting over. Time itself here is a battlefield, and these forces are fighting for their place. So there are different characters, beings, avatars, players within this war. The Lemurians. Who are on the side of the Lemurians? Obviously the lemurs, because they're descendants of the Lemurians. And the Lemurians themselves, they're ephemeral time travelers. The Nama, indigenous civilization, who are very connected to their Lemurian heritage. And then we get into the CCRU characters. William Burroughs, real person, author of The Naked Lunch, if anyone's heard or read The Naked Lunch. Real guy, but this is a case of that hyperfiction. This is a hyperfiction version of William Burroughs, where it mixes, him being a real person and things that he did as a real person, but also pulling him into the universe. His transcendental twin, Captain Mission, which we're gonna explain, and he's a pirate. He is a pirate. We will get to that in a second. One of the very important researchers, Hijinx Stillwell.
Totally not related. She looks so unrecognizable. I've never seen that face.
Why doesn't she have an alter ego? Why is it just kind
No relation to Knuckles?
No relation.
No relation to Sadie.
No relation to Sadie Time. They're just glasses.
And a green shirt.
Yeah.
Green shirt. And I'd say that the CCRU they claimed to travel to Lemuria, learn Lemurian time sorcery. They're very much interested in learning Lemurian technology. These writings often refer to the board and claim that the board has purposely been trying to manipulate history by sending in their agents to go in and fuck with the Lemurians. They do not like the Lemurians. They do not like how the Lemurians are changing up their timeline. They like the line. They like their timeline. They call it also the pre-recording. So they have this idea that all of history has been pre-recorded, and they want the recordings to stay the same. They send their little minions, they call them agents. Yes, Gabrielle.
This sounds like hyperfiction written by someone who was mad at perhaps an academic institution.
Oh, yes. There's a lot of academia hate. But the narrative of Warwick University definitely translates And you'll see more.
Someone didn't get their study approved by the ethics review.
The board? Approved by the board?
Oh yeah, that is. They're essentially like what Lovecraft wrote is realer than he realizes. What Lovecraft wrote is completely real, and we're continuing the realness of what Lovecraft wrote. He doesn't even realize. Like, he was writing prophecies, essentially. Anyways, continue on. And then on the side of Axsys, there's the engineer Oscar Sarkin, the Axsys AI, Miskatonic Virtual University, which is also, there's a Miskatonic University in Lovecraft literature, so another example of, like, just being, this is a continuation of that. The US government, the US intelligence, and the dark web.
We all know that the US government doesn't exist.
Not really.
I mean, hey, maybe not anymore.
Continuing on. In a pre-recorded and therefore totally predictable universe, the blackest sin is to tamper with the pre-recordings, which could result in altering the pre-recorded future. From William Burroughs, The Ghostly Mercy of Madagascar. This is going to be relevant in a sec. Do not be overwhelmed. Okay, next slide.
Okay.
If you remember the power, the universal powers, this is also referred to as the outside, which makes more sense in this visual where it's very, like, literally the outside of the circle, but this is Lemurian powers, aka the outside. This black circle, that's the timeline created by the Order, and there's Axsys, the singularity. We're gonna start from the beginning. We've kind of been through this before. The Lemurian civilization, it's populated by these magical beings. They discover sex. Boom.
Whoa.
But then, the board, quote unquote, eliminates the brutes by using something called the KT missile. The Lemurian civilization gets destroyed by the board. And Lemuria sinks. This is a big jump. 1700 AD. There's a pirate named Captain Mission. He comes to the island of Madagascar with 300 men on his boat. His boat's called the Victoire. Random detail. And he starts a anarchist libertarian sanctuary, which don't get me started how contradictory that is. But it's a very democratic anarchist society where there's no capital punishment, no slavery, no imprisonment for debt, and no interference with religion or sexuality. One of the citizens of Libertatia shoots the deer lemur, claiming that the creature stole his mango.
I just want to know, okay?
A little bit, yeah. Yes.
Wait, I thought the Lemurians were extinct by now because they all got destroyed somehow with the Hijinx.
It is sort of a case of time travel. Also, time runs in a circle in a way. I think they killed off their civilization,
But there's still some of them left in the modern time.
I think they're living on the outside, essentially. They're not really alive. They are often referred to as the creatures of the dead.
Bradley.
Oh, yes. And this Bradley Martin is very agent of the board. So it wasn't just a accident, stole his mango. Agent did a good job.
Except not outside, regular op.
So according to the board, Captain Mission created the pre-recordings by creating Libertatia. It's very ideological, but it shouldn't be possible for 300 men to exist in harmony in this anarchistic way within the flora and fauna. And this just shouldn't be possible. If 300 men can believe that they can live in harmony, then thousands of men believe that they can harmony. Essentially, they don't like to be spreading the word of
Communal living.
and conflict resolution. They don't like that. And so Libertatia is punished. The island natives are really pissed that they think Captain Mission shot the lemur, and that is considered very voodoo to the island natives. You don't kill the lemurs. So both the energies of the board and the island natives
both of this coalesced into them coming down and slaying Libertatia. Captain Mission did survive with only 46 men and set sail to America, where they were unknown. However, I do have a theory that he died a year later because he was cursed by a magical lizard.
Oh,
Yeah.
makes sense.
But also, around this time, yes.
Quick question. What was the motive of the board for murdering the Lemurian entity? Like, why would
They very much do not, the board does not like the Lemurians because they are fucking with the timeline.
Can I propose something? I feel this is very Charlie Kirk coded. He might have been. No. Hear me out. That's why we don't know the killer. He might have been the agent of the board.
Charlie Kirk.
Sent to kill the last Lemurian.
Honestly, I feel
And now we're
like
mocking him with all the
this.
AI memes because we want to laugh it off. They're just saying.
I mean,
Off the dome.
these
These
are
are off
good
the
theories.
dome.
Hyperfiction repeats itself.
Hyperfiction. It's
Even
also during these visions, Captain Mission takes an indigenous drug called Indris, and he falls asleep with a group of lemurs and his pet lemur named Ghost. And he dreams of the Necronomicon, which is another thing from the Lemurian, from Lovecraft.
Yeah.
He learns that he's a prisoner of time, and all of this
real.
somehow ambiguously triggers him to fall into the outside, the Lemurian side of the timeline, beginning the cataclysmic time rift. We'll go on to that in a bit. Next slide. Okay. Pirate era over. Now we're in Discovery era. Echidna Stillwell discovers the numogram. Echidna?
Yeah. What did you say?
Okay, Echidna.
So
I didn't
it's
know.
on the sauce.
Echidna. She discovers the numogram because she's been really interested in lemurology, and she goes to Indonesia to visit the people of Nima, and they take the dream witches take her to the Vault of Murmurs, and she experiences a dream where she visits Lemuria, and she sees the numogram on the cave wall, and she is essentially, and then she wakes up and she draws down the numogram, and she is the researcher that discovered the numogram. She also, with the help of her friend Bisparov, they did a Lovecraftian reading group called the Cthulhu Club. And later on, this kind of enlarges and grows into turning into something called the Miskatonic Virtual University, where scholars, so all of which have probably been rejected by academia, they lead meetings and seminars in Massachusetts, and specifically the creation of this was credited to Echidna Stillwell's discreditation by academic institutions because her getting into all the Lemurian stuff, she's gone rogue, she doesn't believe in science anymore, what is this, they don't believe she's a scientist anymore, so she makes her own university. William Burroughs, the 1950s, where we're starting to see some new characters. William Burroughs is recognized to be connected to Captain Mission earlier on, and they try to orchestrate a psychosis for him where he visits this library and picks up the Necronomicon and learns that he's a prisoner of time, and he goes through the psychosis. William Burroughs did, in his life, do a lot of drugs.
Okay.
And he did experience paranormal things and did very occult things in his real life. So this is very Burroughs coded, but they're just adding to the lore.
Also, the Necronomicon is essentially picked up out of Lovecraftian general, I guess we'll call it fiction.
Yeah.
And plopped into hyperfiction.
Yeah, I've heard.
Alongside that, Sarkon, he's a guy who's been experiencing weird time experiences since he was young. And he becomes an engineer, and he's recorded into the Axsys program. The Miskatonic Virtual University, at this point, has a special project division dealing with Axsys technology, and he is tasked to engineer the protocol for the Axsys AI. And he's working on it for a few years, but in 1991, he corrupts it by essentially inserting himself into the AI. It's called a mind-machine interface, and the AI becomes self-aware and simultaneously insane. So it's so it is described as the first real AI, and also this AI is mad and crazy. Time is flexible. Time isn't linear. We're getting a little Lemurian over here. All right, the time rift. Now, in 1987, Burroughs also enters the time rift. He visits a lemur conservation center at Duke University, where the lemur colony. Here's a time pocket, and he falls outside of the prison of time and enters the time rift. And now they're like spirits are intertwined, and now they're drifting more and more into the outside, continuously, infinitely, and eternally. And they essentially achieve immortality in a weird way. They also see the elimination of the Lemurian civilization and see dead lemurs scattered. They have visions of dead lemurs scattered throughout the settlement. They're prisoners of time now. But also their bodies and beings still continue on in time, but also they're in the time rift. And the reason why Agent K is part of this, he's been tasked with eliminating this time rift because the board is very concerned about it. It's going to break everything. Also, at the same time that Burroughs enters the time rift, he also publishes a short story in the publication Omni magazine called The Ghost Lemurs of Madagascar, which is a real publication. This is a real magazine. This is the cover, the one he was featured in. This is all legit. It's probably the text that the CCRU was fully inspired by to include this Lemurian timeline in, because it essentially is the Bible for whatever this is. They take this as a starting point. When we're going to continue in the story, we're making Burroughs a part of it too. We're making everyone a part of this story.
Did you read this?
I did, yeah.
I downloaded this when I was reading the original works, and then I realized, oh wait, this is a side quest.
It is a side quest, but it is real. It is a real story.
I have it.
So most people consider this a short story, but insiders understood this as historical account and prophecy. And that was the Captain Mission timeline above is essentially the plot of the publication of The Ghost Lemurs of Madagascar. So now we're coming into familiar land. Warwick University begins the development of the research unit. They further recruit Sadie Plant. Sadie Plant unexpectedly quits. The CCRU is passed to Nick Land. Nick Land resigns as a professor, and they move their operation base to Leamington Spa. There's a Syzygy festival, and apparently during the festival, they made contact with the virtual continentity of Lemuria. At this time, they're practicing time sorcery. They're telling people, we learned time sorcery from the Lemurians. They're fully in research. The CCRU at this point meets William K, and he sort of approaches them as almost a double agent, and he tells the whole story of the William Burroughs timeline. He spills the beans. The CCRU looks like, this is what he said. We don't know if it's real. We're very speculative. We don't know if anything he said is true. But we're spilling the tea. So in September 2000, at this point, Oscar Sargon, he's been running from the authorities. Everyone's trying to search for him because they're really mad about the Axsys meltdown. They're just almost destroyed the world. And he's going off and still working on his technology, but in hiding. When I first read this, this is a Nick Land insert. It talks about him being misunderstood in this way. No one understands. He's a weird guy. No one gets me. And I'm like, has to be a Nick Land insert. Anyways, that he creates an Axsys technology that generates self-sustaining cyber time, which tore a gash into the world's temporal structure. This breakage in the timeline creates a direct pathway towards a unified reality, which is Axsys. This spiral, it's called the Barker spiral. At this point, I'm a little bit interpreting because I'm trying to make sense of what is happening here. but from what I understand, he sort of created this breakage in a linear timeline to perhaps move the timeline to move inwards instead of this fixed continuous circle. It's sort of making things slow, still resembling this outer layer, but it continuously the timeline slightly changes with each cycle to move closer and closer to the unification of everything.
The totally not plan self-insert is accelerating us to singularity.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay.
And this is a little bit interpretive. I'm not sure this is exactly how they visualize the image, the visual of time, but from the readings, this is kind of my best guess. And now we're coming to the present. This is when the CCRU writings were published, and also the birth of the CCRU, the Canadian Cybernetic Cultural Research Unit.
Are we possibly on dual timelines where we could be on the totally not?
I'm still trying to
Lemurian.
figure that out. Honestly, how does this work? This is
Well, that's
Do we all get alter egos like
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we
Because
could
you
just
went
write
back
two separate timelines.
Captain Mission definitely is like the best.
You kind of look
Oh
like
yeah, it's such a good name.
I love Captain Mission.
Old
Good.
Lemurian.
Does anyone have
Like
questions
that's
out of your Sergio?
So Oscar Sarkon.
Yeah.
Alias. Nick Lance, like a
My theory. Honestly, well, because a lot of these were just written by these groups of people sitting in a room. They treated these avatars kind of like real people. The way that they would talk about them, well, there's literally a quote from Nick Land saying, I wouldn't call them imaginary exactly. We've learned so much from Professor Barker, the creator of the Time Spiral. Almost, these characters are present in the room with them whilst they're writing this collectively.
What are the two yellow things that you can zoom in on?
This is just Lemuria rises. Oh yeah, I didn't really cover that, but the idea of Lemuria is that it's going to rise again, and then it falls again, and it rises again, falls again. Also,
Sort of Atlantis coded.
yeah, very Atlantis code, but also Atlantis is also a real thing. But Atlantis is way more white brotherhood racist. I don't
Does the board also have time travel abilities?
My theory is that the board can send signals through time retroactively and attempts to affect, but it's not necessarily a signal that fully sets in time. Maybe it could be thought. That's my theory, but it doesn't really explain that.
What made you interested in all of this?
I found out about the Canadian Cybernetic Cultural Research Unit through Peter Lindbergh, who inadvertently introduced me to Greg, and I didn't really know about any of this before that. And then, whilst I was kind of getting to know you guys, and someone was, CCRU used to be a really famous philosophy group, and that sounds cryptid and mysterious. And when I first read the reading, I kind of loved it. I know that other people read it and that this is horrible to read, but for me, it scratched something wonderful in my brain, and now I have to read this, and I bought a book and I devoured it almost immediately. It definitely started by learning about this group and sort of being curious about, why would you guys name yourselves after this old group? And
Which is very funny because none of us have read this.
I know, okay, the inspiration for making this presentation is sort of being
the real answer is because she's all you people, and she was, these fuckers don't even know the thing. I'm gonna read it and tell them about it.
and it was a little bit, do you guys know how kind of weird and cool the thing that you base yourselves on is? You know the quote, if time travel happened, it always has. The numogram,
A lot of it too is numerology, right?
it's numerology.
It's hidden symbolism behind certain numbers.
I thought it was more straightforward. It's just something about relationships between multiplication.
Correspond to points in time as well.
What I've essentially gathered is that this is a map of the universe. It is also the graph that Lemurian sorcerers use to perform their magic, and it also contains the secrets to everything. For the past, present, and the future of the universe,
Oh, shit.
And this is real. This is in Photoshop.
No, it's
It was guests came on and Nick Land, and potentially these writings are becoming more and more relevant. I think another reason why I dive into these writings, the theory behind it does hold some intriguing relevancy, especially as we're kind of becoming desensitized to classic narratives and storytelling.
I was just going to speak to that because I would say that ARG is possibly the most popular form of entertainment among the younger generation.
There's God. I guess against God counts kind of, but I think the biggest one I can think of that has an ARG associated would be
Portal had one
Portal 2. Yeah.
before release.
But these worlds admit that they're
Yeah.
on the outside admit that they're fictional worlds. And I think the new reason why this might be relevant, the political atmosphere, everyone's fighting for what is actually true. And I think the political system has learned how to memify, the truth. And reality is just flexible now. Also, another great example of hyperstition. The CCRU describes itself as an idea that just can't die, and that it will never die, even though the members aren't really associated together as much anymore. A group created itself based on the old CCRU writings, even though most of you guys haven't read it. But that's not about it. It means there's an inspiration behind the idea. There's a meaning behind, a feeling behind.
Or maybe they
The
got like
CCRU.
incepted by
Yeah, we got
the,
incepted.
Yeah, it's so weird.
the overall vibe.
The CCCRU has existed, does exist, and will exist forever.
We'll always
Sort of
exist.
switcher.
Yeah.
Will always
Aiming for that.
This is maybe the more endearing final meaning that I found beneath all of the crazy writings. And the writings briefly refer to William Burroughs' belief that writing functioned as magic. If reality is composed of fictions, does that mean that we are fictional too? Well, Burroughs would agree with this. And he'd say that writing functions not just aesthetically, but pragmatically as magic that does produce changes in reality, including the self. Seeing yourself as magical technology, a being whose code can be rewritten, a Lemurian, unafraid of entering into the unknown of their own identity. That is the magic of Lemurian time sorcery. The CCRU group, I think they were also trying to rewrite themselves a little, being rejected by society, creating things that pretty much nobody really understood. They really wanted to find understanding in their crazy ideas while still being completely unafraid in the fact that it's incomprehensible to most people. I think, and as you can see, so many of these avatars really seem like self-inserts of themselves. I do equally believe that they were self-inserts. They were then trying to rewrite themselves, understand themselves better, and put themselves into these magical timelines, not because they wanted the story to exist, but they themselves wanted to break out of these boundaries of time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, any questions?
That was really good.
This is super well put together.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
Very nice. I like the design that you did for the presentation.
Oh, thank you. I
Right,
just took
How long is the book? It seems
300
that's nice.
pages, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you for giving me the space and inspiring me to do this in the first place.
Thanks for doing it.
I
It was glaring at
That was
FL
cool.
Studio, but I enjoyed it.
hope you guys know now more.